Hi, this is part 5 of chapter 1 lecture. In this part of the lecture, we are going to discuss about how to classify the matter into different categories. In general, matter can be classified into two broad categories of a substance and a mixture, or you can further categorize substance into two different types such as an element or compound, or mixture into again two different categories of heterogeneous and homogeneous categories. In the next slide I'm going to give you the detailed definition of how to differentiate one from another, but let's just follow this flow chart and see if we can clearly distinguish one type of matter into another. Again, matter is anything that occupies mass and volume. Okay, so if that is the case, let's ask this question of, is that matter is one type of particle or one type of matter or a combination of matters? If it is just one type of particle, we call that type of matter as a pure substance. So that pure substance, we could ask if this can be separable into simpler substances or not. If you cannot separate a pure substance into simpler substances, which means you have the simplest form of matter, which is an element. Element cannot be broken down further. Element is made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons, and it is the smallest form of matter, which we will discuss in the next chapter about element. But it is the smallest form of matter. That's all you need to know for now. So, which means it is a pure substance that cannot be broken down into further substance particles. But if you have a pure substance that if you could further separate them into smaller substances, then we call that part of the pure substance as a compound. Water is, for example, a compound that contains two different pure substances of elements, hydrogen and oxygen. So you could technically break the water into individual hydrogens and oxygens, but water is pure because it contains only water. Okay? Let's go back to the right side of the flowchart where it does not contain one type of particle. In that case, we call that type of matter as a mixture. That mixture can be of two different categories. It could be a homogeneous if it is uniform throughout, or it could be heterogeneous if it is not uniform throughout. A homogeneous is when you mix one or more than two components together, and if they make a uniform solution that you can no longer tell the difference between which and which. Like in the green tea, you couldn't point out the caffeine molecule where it is present. It is there that you can feel, but you cannot clearly identify or pick out easily. So it is called a homogeneous solution. Whereas if you see the example of heterogeneous solution, here you have a seawater and a sand. You can clearly see two different layers. So because you're able to pick out two different layers clearly, you can call that solution mixture as a heterogeneous mixture. Okay. In the previous slide, when I showed you the flow chart, I already discussed what is a matter is and how to separate one from another. Let's just look into the definitions more detail or the same information. If you need to take notes here, you can take notes from this information as well. Again, a substance is a form of matter that has definite composition, but it can be separable into smaller particles or not, depending on if you have an element or compound. In the examples you see here, salt is a pure substance compound. Excuse me. Iron is a pure substance element. Water is a pure substance compound, and mercury is a pure substance element. Carbon dioxide is a pure substance compound, and oxygen is a pure substance element. Okay. And a mixture is a physical combination of two or more substances. As we discussed, homogeneous is a uniform mixture solution like seawater or apple juice. We're saying seawater, but not sand here, apple juice. And a heterogeneous solution is, you can say, trail mix or mix of seawater and sand or chicken noodle soup. These are the examples of heterogeneous solutions. So let's see the different types of matter as we are trying to classify the matter. Matter by definition again is anything that has mass and occupies volume. So let's look into three different forms of matter that you can experience. One is a solid. Solid matter exists because the individual particles of that particular form of matter are next to each other in a highly closed packed environment. Because they are next to each other in a specific environment, in a packaged shape, they will acquire a shape of whatever you were able to touch and feel, like this table or this remote. It is possible because the particles in this matter are tightly packed. So because they acquire a specific shape, they cannot assume the shape of the container because they were already solid. Imagine ice cube in a glass. It wouldn't acquire the shape of it. It has its own shape, so it will have some empty spots in the glass if you fill the glass with ice cubes. Let's see this case of liquids. Liquids are a form of matter where particles are lie so close to each other but not tightly packed. You can say they were loosely connected to each other. So because of that nature, they have this labile nature of able to acquire the shape of the container, but they still have the shape to see visibly because they were close to each other but not tightly packed. It is the second form of matter, liquid. The third form of matter, liquid, does not have any shape to be able to see because they were far apart. They were far apart from each other, so they do not have an assumed shape. But they occupy any assumed container, but just not visible like solid and liquid because the molecules of gas are one from another is very far from each other. Like you can feel it. Like for example, we have air that contains oxygens, nitrogens, carbon dioxide, and rest of the elements, but you cannot see it because they were separated from each other with a large distance between one substance to another. So technically, any matter, like if it is an element or a compound or a mixture or any matter, can be possible to exist in either solid form or liquid form or gaseous form. It just happened to have a different melting points and boiling points. But if you could identify the temperature of where it melts, where it boils, you could see each form of matter in three different possible physical states. For example, water, we see it in the form of ice, a solid, and we see it in the form of liquid water, and we see it in the form of vapor. So just like water, how it can able to exist in ice, water, and water vapor, you could see for any other matter, you could see them in all three different possible states, but they have these varying degrees of boiling point and melting points. Mixtures, if you have, for example, a mixture that sometimes you could separate one from each other by a physical means. Let's say this is one of the experiments that I used to do when I'm a child, where you mix the sand and iron ore pieces and use the magnet to separate all. That's a cool experiment. So you could physically separate sometimes, or if you have a salt water solution, if you evaporate all the water, what you left with is salt. So by physical means, you could separate mixtures because they were not making a new compound, they were just mixed with each other. Okay, that's all for this part of the chapter. I'll see you in the part 6 of the chapter soon.